Dear friends from all over the world, a warm welcome to the third day of this 145th International Convention of the Theosophical Society, that this year is dedicated to the fascinating topic, cycles of awareness. Before starting the activities of the day, we will enhance our inspiration, the feeling of our unity, and the sense of our common work to the benefit of all beings through the universal prayer. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. So, dear friends, let me start with the symposium, introducing the first speaker, that is Janne Baker from England. Janne joined the Theosophical Society in 1981. She is a qualified yoga teacher and therapist and came to Theosophy through yoga. For to her, Theosophy was the next step on her spiritual journey. She has been the national president of the English section since 2015. She is a member of the International General Council of the Theosophical Society and serves on its executive committee. She is also on the Council of the Federation of European Theosophical Societies and is a council member of the International Theosophical Center at Natten. Her lecture is entitled From Becoming Aware of Ever Becoming, and I invite her to talk.
From a very early age, a baby starts to become aware of its surroundings, and by the age of 3, it can recognize itself in a mirror and knows itself as a separate individual. All through childhood and into adulthood, the awareness of ourselves and the world in which we live grows. We accumulate massive amounts of knowledge, acquire skills and develop a personality as we mature into adulthood. We become aware of all that life has to offer in a materialistic world, and for some people this is all they require. But this awareness is not the whole story, and for some of us there seems to be something missing. We feel the need for a deeper meaning to our lives and begin to search for something which is beyond our consciousness awareness, which we call spirit or soul. This search into the depths of our being takes various forms and will take a long time. For most, this acknowledgement of a soul, of an eternal oneness, comes gradually, and for others it can happen spontaneously. Let me share my story with you. I was a very shy child, introverted, diffident, and lacking in self-confidence. At the age of about 13, I longed to be like some other girls in my school, outgoing, gregarious, and seemingly always having a good time. I brooded over these thoughts for a long time until one day I had a sudden realization, which was that it would not matter what I was like on the outside. Regardless of whether I was introverted or extroverted, my I, or myself with a capital S, would always be the same I, the same self. In that moment of inspiration, I had become aware of what I now know to be my true self. I had managed to separate my personal ego from my spiritual ego, and I found it extremely comforting. I decided to stop fretting about what I could not be and to get on with being who I was. Sadly, the significance of this was not apparent to me until much later in life, when I started to study yoga philosophy and theosophy. Becoming aware, or to put it another way, becoming conscious that our personality and our senses and emotions are not who we really are, is the first step on the path to self-realization. Like the many tracks leading to the top of a mountain, there are as many different approaches as to how this goal can be achieved. And like the many hazards that lie along the mountain tracks, we need to be wary of things that can distract us on our quest for truth. Climbing a mountain requires fitness, determination, and alertness to the various obstacles that lie in the path, as does our spiritual journey. For it is easy to become less alert and perhaps to become complacent, or maybe impatient, or to be distracted by the pleasures of life. Our five senses let us know where we are in time and space. Our senses feed our minds with experiences, images, and sensations. But what part does the mind play in our consciousness? Are mind and consciousness the same? Let us put it another way. Can there be mind without consciousness? No, there can be no mind unless consciousness is present. But mind is not consciousness, for consciousness is self-awareness. And what is self-awareness? It is the knowledge of our true self. From becoming aware of the outer planes of existence, we will eventually realize we have delved into the inner planes of existence. Then we change from becoming aware to just becoming, to ever becoming. Ever becoming describes the pilgrim's progress on its spiritual journey towards oneness. To attain oneness, we must be free from all dualities and search for our inner peace in the middle of life's turmoil. It is hard to imagine a life free from duality, for duality is all around us and all we have ever known. There cannot be light if there's no darkness, no in without an out, no joy without sorrow, no positive without negative, and so on. Let us consider a coin. It has two sides, a front and a back, but it also has an edge or a rim. It is the same with a sheet of paper, but here the edge is finer, and although it is still present. So, imagine being able to dissolve the two sides and leave only the edge. Duality is lost and only oneness remains. Ever becoming is not a finite expression, but one that describes the continuous evolution of the spirit within. The start of the evolutionary process, we are told, is the great breath, which the secret doctrine also calls the divine breath. This great breath becomes a stone. The stone becomes a plant, the plant an animal, the animal a man, the man a spirit, and the spirit a god. Theosophy teaches that life has but one attribute, which is eternal, ceaseless motion. Hence the significance of the term ever becoming, when applied to the one universal life and to our own life. Once we have started on the path to self-realization, there is no turning back, although there may be times of inertia, times of doubt, of distractions, and numerous deviations along the way. To help us on the journey, we use guides that advocate certain practices. These can include yoga and meditation and the study of sacred texts. But often the first step that is required is a change of our lifestyle. We need to develop patience with ourselves and selflessness, for the more we can leave our lower nature behind, the smoother the path ahead. Our thoughts and actions are for the good of others as we put aside our own wants and desires. We require no recognition or reward for what we do, although karma will play its part. The longing for the union with our higher self is unstoppable. It is part of the process of ever becoming. The harder we try, the more our efforts are rewarded, and we find it easier to let go of material things, for we know they have no permanence. The only permanence is that which we seek. Let us return to the mountain climbing analogy. The climber has overcome many difficulties, but nevertheless continues undeterred. So sure are they that they will achieve their goal. That is, until they come to one final obstacle, a deep ravine with rocky sides and a torrent of fast-flowing water at the bottom. The only way across is to construct a bridge, using any available means. The mountaineer sees a person on the other side and throws a rope, and together a bridge is built. The seeker of truth reaches a similar obstacle, the gap between his lower and his higher self. This too requires the construction of a bridge, the Antakarana, or as some people like to call it, the Rainbow Bridge. Just how do we cross this divide between our two selves? Our higher self cannot cross to the lower, but instead encourages the pilgrim in his efforts to bridge the divide. We throw out a mental rope. Our thoughts are only with reaching our higher self, as we tell our higher self that we are ready to cross, that we have left behind the trappings of our worldly life. We have lightened the load that we carry, for along the way we have been able to distinguish between the finite and the infinite. We have attuned ourselves with all things spiritual and are ready to enjoy absolute and total bliss. The Vedic prayer is brought to fruition. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Many thanks, Janne, for your inspiring words. Next speaker is Patrick Kafunga from Zambia, a visual artist, alternative earth practitioner. He practices reflexology and acupressure, and a member of the Theosophical Society in East and Central Africa, Kitwe Lodge. He joined the Theosophical Society in 1999, and he is the Kitwe Lodge Secretary since 2006. He attended to both local and international conventions, and his speech is entitled Spirituality and holistic approach. So please, Brother Patrick.
Greetings from Zambia, Kitwe Lodge in particular. I also want to relay special regards to our president and his administration, to the organizing committee, and I also, in the same vein, would like to thank you for considering me for this special event. I also want to greet all the participants, brothers and sisters. My talk is entitled Spirituality, a Holistic Approach. For starters, I must quickly mention that this talk is structured not only to provoke discourse, but also to rekindle interest in some areas of our spiritual endeavors that we may have overlooked as we have been busy with equally important matters of spiritual concerns, however advanced and fantastic. To begin with, let us try to define what spirituality is. Of the many perspectives and interpretations that have been advanced regarding this subject, I would like to zero in on one definition that I hope is appreciably unrestricted in its generality so that we can all relate with it. And this is the one that describes spirituality as a process of awakening from ordinary consciousness to universal consciousness. This definition implies the search to know our real self. It also implies the search to discover the true nature of our consciousness with the ultimate goal of achieving spiritual awakening or self-realization. In dealing with spirituality, we encounter religion, we also encounter philosophy, we also encounter science. These are the three thought systems that make up the bulk of knowledge that we need to deal with in order to progress on our spiritual journeys. To suppose that one can acquire a perfect state of our awakening by merely falling in love with religion alone, with science alone, with philosophy alone, is something that we may need to seriously look into. My little experience with this fanatical approach only took me to a cul-de-sac, a dead end. Human nature being what it is, even after reaching the dead end, we still want to hold on to this dead end and make it more comfortable for ourselves, and then come up with apologetics, doctrines, theories, admonitions, and even threats of doom to those who will not adhere to this proverbial dead end. Oh yes, I call it a dead end because the more we succumb to it, the more we experience spiritual stagnation. We also experience the disappearance of intellectual curiosity and self-determinism. Our knowledge base becomes limited and constricted, leading to the loss of our volition. After so much trouble, after so much faith, what we get in return is just mental gratification. We have managed to be faithful even for lifetimes and still remain aloof and oblivious of cycles upon cycles of awareness, to the extent that our fears, our insecurities, our prejudices, our stereotypes, social norms remain with us all the same. Religion correlates with the path of devotion, philosophy with the path of knowledge, and science with the path of service. Among the problems that humanity has been facing in dealing with the deeper aspects of its spirituality is the failure to harmonize these three thought systems in order to deal with a complete puzzle of knowledge. Apart from this, we also have been paying too much attention to our religious beliefs, which we cannot question, unfortunately. And it is this absence of scrutiny that organized religion has become an imperial tool to be administered in the colonization of Africa and other parts of the world, with special regards to Christianity and Islam. We also have been paying too much attention to our cultural norms, which we also do not question, and traditional practices that in most cases have been inhibiting our natural instincts to explore and exchange new ideas of mutual interest and mutual benefit as we come into contact with the larger human family. Then also we have to deal with the animosity, both in concept and in context, exhibited by the proponents and exponents of religion, science, and philosophy. Those of us who have been exposed to the comparative study of these thought systems can attest to the beauty of this holistic approach. We can also attest to the beauties that esoteric religion, philosophy, and science reveal to us, coupled with the joy of self-discovery that it brings. At this stage, we are going to briefly look at how our various approaches towards spirituality have been encumbered or limited and dwarfed by our somewhat fanatical preferences. For a start, let us look at philosophy, which principally is the seeking of knowledge or wisdom, and whose foundation rests on natural or physical principles and moral or ethical principles. In the absence of science, which represents the natural, and religion, which represents the moral, philosophy is seen to degenerate into baseless rhetorics, dry syllogism, and self-conceited paradigms that have only led to ideologies and isms of race and class systems. We have the proletariat, we have the bourgeoisie. We also experience in living color how these isms have promoted strife and spiritual poverty. Science, being a theoretic experiential construct built around the workings of the laws of nature, has, in the absence of philosophy and religion, sought to defy the very laws of nature and natural philosophy upon which it is founded. Now, driven by greed, men of science are busy inventing weapons of mass destruction, pandemics, GMOs, including the same pandemic that we are experiencing nowadays. Modern science is now caught up in its own web of finding solutions to remedy what it is busy creating, all just for profit. Religion, whose foundation was firmly stationed on moral philosophy as the basis for the pursuit and realization of knowledge pertaining to divinity or God, has, in the absence of philosophy and science, fallen to a mere tool for the elite, the priests, the politicians, to use in the subjugation of our functional intelligence and free will in the masses of people who look up to them. It is no longer about enlightenment anymore, but about indoctrination and blind credulity. It has relegated itself to an entity that is intolerant and impervious to reason and common sense. Overshadowed by greed, it promotes disunity through the promotion of bigotry, sophistry, and apologetics. Organized religion has become the #1 source of human conflict on the planet, and hence a useful political tool for mind control. Theosophy, being the synthesis of all the thought systems, it lays for us the most profound hypotheses that provide the missing pieces that help us unravel the path to our divinity through the labyrinth of myth and folklore, historical telltales. The path of spirituality is a path that demands a functional participation of all the thought systems and the point at which they all meet. In concluding, I want to quote from The Secret Doctrine, 3rd edition, or the 3rd volume, rather, and unquote, "Humanity is the child of cyclic destiny, and not one of its units can escape its unconscious mission or get rid of the burden of cooperative work with nature." Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your time. I hope we were able to pick 1 or 2 items. I end here.
Thank you, Patrick, for your meaningful vision. And now next speaker that I introduce you is Janne Vuononvirta from Finland. Janne has been a member of the Theosophical Society since 2007 and the General Secretary of the Finnish section since 2018. He is a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, and a Taekwondo instructor. In his life, he is interested in bridging science and ageless wisdom, and thus aiding people to find balance within themselves. His lecture is entitled Becoming Aware of the Suffering and How to Deal with It, and I ask Janne, please, to deliver his talk.
Hi everyone, my name is Janne Vuononvirta and I'm the General Secretary of the Theosophical Society in Finland. My topic today is becoming aware of the suffering and how to deal with it. Buddha taught about 2 arrows of suffering. First arrow is the pain, adverse life events and difficult times that all people are forced to face while living the daily life. No one can escape the pain. The pain is an inevitable part of the life. We are all vulnerable to the miseries of the life. The first arrow is something that happens to me, something that comes from the outside. Even if I did everything right, I could not avoid it entirely. Bad things just happen. The second arrow is something that happens inside you. It is the reactions to the hardships, the perceptions, thoughts, emotions, feelings, bodily sensations, and actions. You shoot that arrow yourself. This is where you have some power, perhaps not much, but some. It might not be easy, but you can influence how you react, how you perceive things, how you think, and how you act. Let us look at the second arrow in more detail. Cognitive behavior therapy emphasizes that the interpretation one makes on the events has a strong effect how one reacts. Imagine a following example. You are walking on the street and see a friend of yours on the other side of the road. You try to greet him, but he does not greet you back. He doesn't seem to notice you. How would you react? The thoughts that come to your mind give directions to the following emotions and other reactions. If you thought, I guess he's avoiding me, maybe he doesn't like me anymore, maybe I have offended him somehow, you would probably feel sad, disappointed, and lonely. On the other side, if you thought he might be busy, he just didn't see me, it would be easy to let go and just continue the day. Following this kind of an event, some people who have tendency for depression might continue thinking, I am so stupid and uninteresting, nobody likes me, and thus make themselves feel even worse. These thoughts can keep rolling on in one's head, and by the time one gets back home, one is feeling very anxious, ashamed, and lonely. One might scream at his wife and children, and binge-watch TV and drink beer all evening, or act in another unconstructive way, such as withdraw from social connections or do work or sports excessively, ignoring everything else in life. The thoughts that come up in the challenging situation of the daily life are automatic. Usually, you do not even realize what is happening in your head. During the day, thousands of thoughts can run through your mind. When you are not aware of this process, in the evening you just feel bad and do not know the reason. The automatic thoughts derive from the belief system, from one's personal philosophy of life that one has learned over his life, usually unconsciously. The belief system activates when something reminds you of the history you have lived, of the wounds you have had, of the wounds that have not yet healed. When you investigate the belief system, you can find rudimentary thoughts and emotions that express how you think about yourself, about others, and about the world around you. These core beliefs are usually something like, I'm worthless, I don't deserve love, I'm a bad person. It seems that in the core of one's personal philosophy of life lies a deep sense of separateness, a strong I don't belong thought. However, you can become aware of this and start changing your conditioning that you have been building since early childhood and even before that. You can stop reacting and start recreating yourself and your life. There are 4 steps which you can take to weaken the power of the second arrow. First step. First step is to become aware that this is a moment of suffering. In the West, the ethos is that suffering is an anomaly in the life. Bad things are not supposed to happen, at least not to me. Western people have a tendency to look away when there is suffering, whether it's my own or someone else's. However, suffering does not go away when you put your head into the bush. It remains until you decide to do something about it. You need to stop and look at the situation, look at the reactions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, bodily sensations, and action tendencies. Try to see everything as purely as you can, and just hold everything in open awareness. At this point, you do not try to change anything, not the situation, not the inner reactions. Just let everything be as it is. The first step is to see what is really happening. You do not judge or criticize the life or your reactions, just note them. You recognize that this is a moment of suffering. Second step. Second step is to accept that suffering is a part of life. Bad things happen. It means to accept not only the hardship, but your own reactions to the difficulties too. You are a human being. You were born with this fight, flight, or freeze response. Whatever you think, feel, or experience, it's okay. You don't need to be ashamed of your reactions. They are the voice of your past. Accepting means that you stop fighting against the windmills. It means that you stop trying to put life or yourself into a fixed form how you would like everything to be. Instead, you connect with the reality. Accepting takes a lot of courage, but only then a real change is possible. Third step. Third step is to remember the shared humanity. When something bad happens, you may think that you are the only one who is having difficult times. If you think in this line, you feel yourself alone and separated from the others. In this case, you are forgetting the reality that everyone faces difficulties. No one likes suffering. No one likes stress. Everyone wants to be happy. All this is part of being a human. You can remind yourself that you too belong to the network of the life. You are a part of this great body of humanity. When you open your heart to this fact, and it is a fact, you can feel elevation. The pain is not gone, but it is lighter to bear when you are not alone. You have a connection with others. You have a connection with the whole of the humanity. You belong. Fourth step. Fourth step is the commitment to do whatever you can to improve the situation. It also means to refrain from making things worse. It is common that when hardship enters one's life, one starts to criticize or blame oneself. This kind of self-talk can be discouraging, and it diminishes the energy that you need to improve the situation. You do not need to wallow in self-pity. Life is already difficult enough. You can be kind to yourself as you are kind to others. So, to conclude, pain and hardship are an unavoidable part of the life. However, understanding how the mind can make it worse, becoming aware of the conditioning of the mind, and changing the way you relate to matters can make the miseries of the life easier to bear. With awareness, you can start building a happier future. Thank you.
Thank you, Janne, for your encouraging words. And now I introduce you the final speaker scheduled for this session, Trân-Thi-Kim-Diêu. Trân-Thi-Kim-Diêu is a member of the Theosophical Society in France since 1972. She is a postgraduate in pharmaceutical technology. She is the chairperson of the European Federation of Theosophical Societies and former president of the Theosophical Society in France. She travels widely to encourage cooperation and promulgate the teachings, as well as to share experiences in service of the TS. Her main concern is to promote a new way of living where each human life can be guided by universal ethics and the mystic dimension of consciousness. The lecture she will deliver is entitled Becoming Aware is Discovering Love. So please, Kim-Diêu.
Hello friends, on the occasion of the International Convention, I am glad to share with you some of my reflections. Friends, the entire life is for learning. What is learning? Learning is learning to be aware. It starts from an early age up to the end of this life, and starts again after rebirth. The field of knowledge extends from inside to outside. There is no difference from the field of consciousness. So, to know is to be conscious, to be aware. An ape is conscious, but only of its limited surroundings. It is little conscious of itself, while humans can be conscious of both outside and inside. They can learn to expand their own awareness inside the field of consciousness. This capacity will lead the humans towards another step in the cycles of learning and knowledge. Observation of the present situation shows that the knowledge of outside implies this kind of awareness about the objective world. Say you see a tree which is in its physical world actual objective because you can see it like I can see it. If I am not enough aware, I may bump into the tree. Similarly, when you drive, awareness of the outer world is indispensable. Now inside, about the consciousness of yours and mine, I cannot be aware of what happens in yours, like you cannot be aware of what happens in mine. It is subjective because it is relevant only to individuals. You may be aware of what happens inside your mind, as I may be aware of what happens in mine. Each one of us, to some extent, can be self-aware. Self-awareness implies that when I am doing something, I know that the action is taking place. I am aware. Likewise, when I am thinking of something or somebody, I know that the thinking process is ongoing, and where it is focused, etc. Simply put, I am aware. So, even though the content of your consciousness and the one of mine may differ, the fundamental fabric of your consciousness and of mine is the same. If it had not been so, no communication would have been possible. Consciousness is the unified field which allows individuals to communicate, to learn, and to share. Since action starts in the mind, any action in the physical, objective world has its origin rooted in consciousness. Therefore, the best discipline for right action is awareness. To learn to become aware, then, is to learn to be righteous, for awareness covers the total field of knowledge, including mind, feelings, and senses. Observation of oneself can throw a new light on what one is doing in physical action, speech, and thinking. And this can give the feeling whether it is right or not. It is not a matter of morality, but an act of getting in tune to what is most profound in oneself. In fact, each of the individual consciousness is an integrated part of the one consciousness, the unified field. Each one's past tendencies and present mind framework would circumscribe the limits and the extent of one's consciousness. Apart these two factors which make us differ in the patterns of mind. Each of us is identical to all the others, fundamentally speaking, on the ultimate level of consciousness. A question then arises: how is it that one cannot recognize the fact of being of the same fabric? Understanding the teachings allied with acute observation shows that the perception of separation between the me and the others comes from negligence or lack of genuine attention. Indeed, when I pretend to be aware of what am I aware, most of the time attention is unknowingly focused on me. Attention has been so far kept in ignorance, so much so that consciousness inside me is absorbed only by myself. Self-absorption testifies for selfishness. The others are around, visible to me, and yet I see them just like items of the landscape. The fact is they are sentient beings is totally missed in my view. This happens when people see a cow and its calf. They see them as meat and not like sentient beings, apt of caring for each other, as well as being capable of suffering from pain and despair when these are driven to slaughterhouse. The fact is that inattention breeds insensitivity. This leads to the notion of otherness. The other is unknown to the fragment of consciousness which I have identified as I. Each of the numerous fragmented cells lives in ignorance of the other, whatever this other may be, humans, animals, or plants, or the entire planet. For these fragmented I's, meaning most of humans, the other does not count. And finally, no one from the others would count really, because each one only matters for oneself. This is a concern crying out poignantly for change. What to do? Can awareness be learned? Is the next question. Learning awareness, then, is an integral part of the new cycle of knowledge. Why knowledge of the objective world has at present surpassed any level so far developed. Knowledge of the subjective world stays almost at the same level as it was millennia ago. Never has the human mind mastered its use in the objective world as it does now. Probes, satellites, all kinds of space-exploring devices are at work to widen the knowledge of the objective world. But today, a crucial question arises with the matter of artificial intelligence. Using the performance of artificial intelligence, humans increased their capacities tremendously, trying to merge the psychological data on cognitive development with technical computer performance. Humans can create in a robot a low level of reactions indicating some sensitivity. But the question is it genuine sensitivity or just a formatted scheme of answers fitting to a set of inputs? So the actual question is, can robots be taught to be humanly and rightly sensitive? Meaning, can robots be taught ethics? The global situation is a severe competition between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. With the high-speed development of the algorithms, humans are going very soon to be overwhelmed by artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence's speed and flux of calculations surpasses tremendously the capacity of the human mind. Algorithms are more capable than humans to solve specific problems, provided they are given the ad hoc inputs and a clear definition of objectives. This function, though impressive, is just mechanical. Due to absence of emotion, there cannot be, in the process, disturbance by emotional interference. Therefore, artificial intelligence would not make mistakes like humans. The only mistakes possible would come from a biased input. This is their strength and their weakness. Why they surpass the human's mind in specific tasks, their sensitivity, so to say, if any, comes from a formatted program. At this point, one can feel that the naming of artificial intelligence is somehow inappropriate. Indeed, intelligence includes capacities of both mind and emotions, since computers, robots do not and cannot have genuine emotions, even not autonomous genuine thinking. One can logically presume that genuine ethics cannot be taught. The fact is that teaching is not formatting. One may ask then, what is awareness and what is self-awareness? True awareness must embrace in its field the objective world, humans and all other sentient beings. To recognize a sentient being as apt to care and capable of suffering, the observer must be aware that he or she is part of this global community of sentient beings. Yet, empathy is not this corporate solidarity existing only for a specific chosen collectivity. It must extend beyond the circle of relationships of oneself. Rare are animals which apply empathy in a general way to their fellow animals, though some can be caring for their own species. The apes can be affectionate to their progenies. What then about the robots? Apes can have limited self-awareness, therefore they have a genuine sensitivity. Robots can have a wide range of awareness of the objective world, and yet, due to want of genuine sensitivity, self-awareness is for them out of the scope. Now coming back to the humans, they are more or less aware due to their negligence or want of attention. They are more or less being so absorbed by themselves, they are more or less self-aware. Getting out of the cave of selfishness asks for some cooperation. They must look out to see that another life is ready for them if such is their wish. And wishing here means willing. Not being completely altruistic, they can begin to care to some extent for others, be these not necessarily in their family or related to them in some ways. Applying self-awareness is to begin to realize righteousness, and together with this, to discover other dimensions of life. First, the despise for other kingdoms ceases. A general respect for all sentient beings invades one's perception, one's feeling, resulting in an undeniable observation, which is everyone, you and I, want to be alive, then why do you impose their slaughtering to feed you? Integrity inside the whole process of intelligent reasoning leads necessarily to realize that taking a sentient life to feed oneself is ugly. The sense of factual reality must not be obnubilated by theoretical speculation. In the process, something new dawns in consciousness. Indeed, when the care for the other sentient beings corroborates awareness as a natural movement of life, awareness feeds care. Something new grows in one's consciousness. A feeling of tenderness overwhelms the content of the mind, and the mind, so to say, yields to the heart, and suddenly love is there, without expectation, without hope. This step is of spiritual growth. It can be felt like an inner spring pouring out waves of tenderness and benevolence. Self-absorption, as well as other forms of selfishness, can be progressively washed away. People call it compassion. It whispers that love must be of intelligent use and must not be kept as a mere subject for discoursing. The theosophical teachings hint that vibrations of our world, according to the cycle of time, indicate, if not lead, the evolutionary process. So there is a time for every cycle. There has been time for knowledge of the objective world. Next, a time for being aware inwardly of oneself. Then comes a time to discover other dimensions of consciousness. Overlapping each other, the beginning of a new cycle cannot be clearly perceptible, like the twilight at dawn and dusk. From half-conscious, the human mind evolved in conscious. Then consciousness grew into self-consciousness, to eventually became awakened into awareness and self-awareness. Becoming more aware, the mind, by its inclusiveness, accedes to a cycle of knowledge of a subtler order. It marks the dawning of intuition, real intelligence, or love, as it is consistently hinted in the evolutionary plan through the universal cycles of consciousness. This cycle strikes the end of the mission of the mind. From a particular, circumscribed condition of consciousness, the human mind now starts flowing towards higher dimensions. From its condition of limited space, it begins now to explore inner boundless space. And through this exploration of the inner boundless space, it may realize its real true nature, rooted in infinity. I wish you the best.
Thank you, dear Kim-Diêu, for your uplifting reflections, and once again, grateful thanks to all the speakers for their interesting and touching lectures. Well, friends, this session is over, but I'm very pleased to announce the video on the International Theosophical Center of Naarden that will last 5-6 minutes and that will be followed by the questions and answers session. Enjoy it!